I interviewed today's guest, Magdalena Wszelaki, back in March 2021 when her book, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, came out. And in that episode, we covered the basics of estrogen dominance. So if you haven't heard that one, it's linked in the episode show notes. And that's where Magdalena covers her own health journey, how she got into women's health, the signs of estrogen dominance, how it's connected to things like the gut, her overview on nutrition. So it's really a general introduction, because in this episode, we're going to go a little bit deeper on a related subject, but more on the more complex subject of breast health. And this includes things like breast cancer, fibrocystic breasts, tender breasts, breasts that grow a cup size or three before the period, or you might have issues with breast nodules and cysts. So yeah, a more in-depth episode, still related. And at the start of the episode, I asked Magdalena to just give us a recap. But if you want to learn a little bit more about her journey and how she got into it, then episode number 1 is where that is at. But just to recap a little bit more about Magdalena, she is the founder of Hormones Balance Community and the Wellena products, supplements made by women for women. Her online platform and products are dedicated to helping women balance hormones naturally. And she is a published author of Cooking for Hormone Balance and Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. She is an endocrine nutrition expert, certified herbalist, speaker, educator, published author with a long history of her own hormonal challenges, including Graves', Hashimoto's, which are both thyroid autoimmune diseases, and estrogen dominance. She is now fully in remission, and she is sailing through peri-menopause and continues teaching women how to accomplish the same. So in this episode, we're going to cover the 3 different hormones or factors that influence breast health, more on lymphatic health, which I think is a huge factor in not only conditions related to the breast, but so many things like chronic fatigue, brain fog, weight loss. So I'm excited to have her share more about that, because it's a condition that I'm really interested in. And there's going to be a more in-depth episode coming up, if it's not already out, with Chloe Stickings. She shares more about that because she specializes in that area. And Magdalena walks us through a breast massage technique, which helps to move the lymphatic system. And it could also be used to check breasts as well. So you could do like a 2-in-1 benefit on a regular basis, check for lumps and bumps, but also support the detoxification of any stagnancy in that area, and just keep the lymphatic and blood flow nice and healthy in that area, because imbalances can be linked to the development of things like breast cancer, unfortunately. We discuss things like the role of iodine, specific nutrients and herbs that can be used, whether she thinks that caffeine and alcohol can be consumed in moderation or if they should be completely avoided, the difference between mammograms and thermographs, and her thoughts on that, her thoughts on bras, like many different things. And I think this is a really important conversation that we had today. So I'm excited for you to have a listen. And yeah, check out Magdalena and all of her products. Her Happy Sisters kit, which we discussed in the episode, is only available for purchase in the US at the moment, but she gives you many different tips and things that you can implement if you're outside of the US. And you could almost like make your own and choose brands that are similar products, or see a herbalist and ask for specific things as well, in terms of breast creams, oils, infused oils, tinctures. There's so many things that we can do, because things like breast cancer, hormone-dependent cancers, and estrogen dominance are on the rise, unfortunately, because of how sick we are as a population. And there's so many factors that go into it. Diet, stress, genetics is only one part of the puzzle, but Magdalena is an example of that. She, on paper, says herself that she has the worst genetics ever, but she is going to be, hopefully, one of the first in her family, in the maternal line, to avoid some sort of hormone-dependent cancer, because there's a strong family history there. So if she was to just follow the mainstream narrative, she could have had some sort of preventative surgery, which doesn't prevent it necessarily. It just kind of prevents the breast cancer if you have your breast removed with a mastectomy, but that inflammation and cause of cancer can manifest as another condition, unfortunately. So yeah, really important conversation. And just a reminder to check your breasts regularly and take care of yourself. And hopefully this inspires you to know that you have so much control over what you're doing. And even if you have a strong family history of some of these conditions, it's not a death sentence. And we want to be proactive with all of this and not just wait until something bad happens. But that said, let's get into the episode. Hi, Magdalena. Welcome back to the podcast for a part 2.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm going to link to the part 1 in the episode show notes, and I would highly recommend watching that back because we cover really the basics of estrogen or estrogen dominance. I'm going to be using those terms interchangeably because we've got a US and a UK practitioner on the call now. But just as an overview, Magda, for those who might have missed it or just want another recap, what exactly is estrogen dominance? And the subject that we're going to be covering today is breast health. Why is estrogen important for that?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're starting with symptoms, because then we can just really show women that almost every woman at some point in her life experiences some level of estrogen dominance, whether she realizes that or not. And it is so common, I will say that 70% of women have it to different degrees. And then because it is so common, we kind of accept it as being normal. And it's not necessarily normal. And we can talk about that in a second. So what are the symptoms? The big things is when you're still a menstruating woman, having these terrible PMSs that we just accept that it's such a big part of being a woman, right? It doesn't really have to be. I mean, there's obviously going to be a change how we feel throughout our cycle, but going ballistic, having to take 2 different painkillers and being antisocial and biting people's heads off is optional. That doesn't have to be that way. Terrible mood swings that of course go with a lot of times with cycles and with estrogen dominance. A lot of changes around breast that we're going to talk a little bit more today. Lumps, fibrocystic breasts, cysts on the breasts, fibroids, women who have a history of thyroid nodules, women who have fibroids, endometriosis. There is an autoimmune component to endometriosis as well, but we certainly know that estrogen dominance makes endometriosis even worse. And that's one of the most painful, conditions that a menstruating woman can still experience. And then you have, other things like how we look. So, for example, women who have a lot of fat around their store a lot of fat and cellulite around their hips and butts and thighs and can't lose that weight no matter how much they exercise. It's typical of an estrogenic woman. I tend to be very estrogenic. If I put on weight, it all goes down there. I'm a typical pear. That's where I will put on weight. Varicose veins. It could be another one. Hair loss, other than a thyroid condition, right? Can be due to estrogen dominance. Women with miscarriages in the first trimester, not to mention infertility, can be a big contributing factor. Women who are then going into peri-menopause and menopause, you think well, estrogen dominance can't happen because our estrogen is going down. That can't be further from truth. And in fact, most women who have estrogenic cancers due to estrogen dominance are in that group. The 45 to 65 is the highest number of women with breast cancers, right? Which is estrogenic cancers. So that is not necessarily true. Your estrogen can drop, but you can still be estrogen dominant. How can that manifest? Well, a lot of women start having anxiety, which they had never experienced before, start having sleeping problems. They can't fall asleep, or they wake up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning and there's just no way of going back to sleep. They start having hot flashes and night sweats, right? So, you tell me who here doesn't have
Everyone's
that.
nodding along while they're listening. They're like, yeah, right? That sounds like me.
And one other thing I want to mention is that gallbladder issues in women can be caused by estrogen dominance, and thickening of the bile and gallstones can be largely due to estrogen dominance. Of course, it can also be due to very poor diet and the overall poor liver function. But estrogen dominance can contribute. It works the other way around, is that the bile, because the bile has such a big role in emulsifying fats, but also binding up dirty estrogens and evacuating them. Women who lost their gallbladder, oftentimes, when I say it, because a lot of times women don't make a connection, but when I say it, that 6 months later, 1 year later, after having a gallbladder removed, estrogen dominance starts showing up. They go, oh my God, I never realized that, but that's very true. And so there is definitely that. And one more other thing I'll mention in that is estrogen dominance can also be present in men. So if your guy has men boobs, not only is it not sexy, but it's actually estrogenic. And then number two is prostate problems, including just the swelling of the prostate as well as prostate cancer, are estrogenic. Speaking of cancers, you know, the most, let's say, severe and advanced form of estrogen dominance, meaning when estrogen dominance is present for a long time, the body is not metabolizing and excreting these dirty estrogens properly. There's a lot of accumulation combined with DNA damage. That's when we see cases of estrogenic cancers or estrogen receptor positive cancers. And so those would be breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, thyroid cancer, interestingly, and also lung cancer in non-smokers, right? So quite a large, broad spectrum of cancers,
Really
and
nice.
prostate cancers in men.
Yeah, and just to recap on some of the causes, like why is all of this happening? So I know a big one that you mentioned was stress, because of how that affects our progesterone. So the thing with estrogen dominance is either that you've got really high levels of estrogen, or it's that your progesterone in comparison to estrogen is too low, and stress is one of the biggest things to impact progesterone. But what are some of the other reasons that we're more estrogen dominant as a society?
Yeah, so that's very true. Estrogen to progesterone ratio, they have to be like two nice dancing partners. Nobody can be dominant. So correcting progesterone, so stress is one thing. Just, you know, simple act of aging can contribute towards that. But the other form of estrogen dominance is when the body breaks down estrogens in an unfavorable way. And that happens. So, you know, so think of it this way: like you're standing in front of a river. This river is flowing. There's a bank in the middle of the river, and this river is kind of murky. But as it goes through the bank, it separates into two streams: one clean stream, and then one dirty stream. So I like to call it the clean estrogens and dirty estrogens. Now, let me just pause here for a second and say, let's not demonize estrogen as such. The term estrogen dominance is helpful because it has given a label to a lot of symptoms that are, you know, plaguing a lot of women. However, it is also important to understand that we need estrogen as women to even function, right? For our mental cognitive functions, for our bone health, for skin, for our you know, moist vaginas, right? And you know, so for all of that we need, for good quality sleep, we need estrogen for that. It's just how we break down those estrogens is a big deal. And guess what? The organ that breaks down estrogens is our liver. And as we age, the liver is like a sieve, right? That is just a lot of things is just going through it. You know, like if you're making a bone broth or vegetable broth, and you've got that sieve, right? Like you're gonna, like, once in a while, like clear it out, and you know, and so when you don't do that, you don't take care of your liver on that. And it doesn't have to be like a detox, like going deep and starving yourself for 2 weeks. You know, it can be, I'm actually a bigger fan of doing consistent work on the liver throughout and often and on a daily basis, rather than be doing these severe fast and then going back
Juice
to
cleanses and stuff like that.
Exactly, right. And then, you know, and then after that, I'm going to go back to eating bagels and cookies and all that stuff, right? So, yeah, so the liver is, you know, it's just the most important organ when it comes to metabolizing those estrogens. And if we take care of that, just a lot of magical things can happen.
And we want to focus on like adding things in rather than taking things away, because I feel like, I don't know if it's just my clients or just as a general theme, people are like, what can I remove now? Which food group can I remove? Or which things can I get rid of? And I'm like, why don't we add some things in, even something as simple as adding in a herbal tea, rather than just cutting out all hot drinks from your diet? Why not swap or adding an extra herbal tea that can support your liver? And I'm also in agreement that we want to do this on a regular basis, because yes, the liver can detox on its own, but with the sheer amount of toxins and pollutants and stress and deficiencies we're exposed to, like, it just can't keep up with the amount of toxins that's coming through.
Absolutely. So, you know, speaking of herbal tea, I mean, having, you know, something as simple, and at a lot of health food stores are now selling teas that are like liver detox teas and stuff, right? And if you look at the ingredients, it typically will contain things like burdock root, dandelion root, you know, artichoke leaf. I mean, those are some of the classical, you know, herbs. If somebody can it has the the likeliness or propensity to trying something new, like having digestive bitters before a meal. That's a really great idea. That's a stronger, so if you think about, like, historically speaking, right, digestive bitters have been present actually in our history for a very long time, and almost every cuisine has an element of bitter, and a lot of times it's consumed prior to like the main meal arriving. So, like, even if you look at something fancy like Campari in North Italy, right? There's a lot of different digestive bitters all around, like in Sweden and Germany and Poland and Russia, and they're often consumed either before and after a meal. And the reason why we do that is because the minute your body recognizes something bitter in the mouth, it immediately starts a cascade of enzymatic production. So you produce more saliva. I'm actually salivating even more right now, even talking about it, because that's like, your mind kind of starts thinking about it. But it's good because that's when you have, the enzyme amylase, right? And that's what's going to break down your carbohydrates. And then, and then goes to the pancreas and then the large intestine and the small intestine to produce more enzymes. And so the digestive bitters really start the whole process of preparing the body for better digestion. So really having a squirt of digestive bitters, before a meal. I actually have them in my house. I have them on the dining table, so I don't forget them. But if I'm going out, I have them in my handbag, and it's actually a really cool thing, like passing it around to friends and squirting it in. One other thing you mentioned about adding, and I like that idea a lot, because taking things out can feel very depriving and limiting, and so we want to approach this more from a place of abundance than what else can I add to nurture my body, rather than punish myself from removing. So one thing I will say is incorporate as many cruciferous vegetables as you can in your daily diet. So I know it's gonna sound pretty like a lot of people are not gonna like it, but I'll say remove the goddamn lettuce from your diet, and incorporate and switch instead to something like mustard greens or arugula. Not spinach. Spinach is not a cruciferous vegetable, and in fact is very high in oxalates. So I'm actually not a fan of spinach at all. But and then bring in things like cabbages and radishes and turnips and collard greens and kale. I'm sure here people who are from Scotland will be saying, like, kale, we give kale to the pigs.
Yeah, exactly. And lettuce, I agree, it's just like hardly any nutrition in there. You really want to get the cruciferous stuff for all of the sulfur and the goodness and the liver detox benefits. Lettuce is just kind of like a filler.
Absolutely. So, just be more mindful, like throw away the zucchini. It's just a whole bunch of water. I mean, if you look at the least nutritional density of vegetables, right, it will be like your lettuce and zucchini is going to be the lowest on the value chain, right? Cauliflower, broccoli, right? Broccoli sprouts. Actually, broccoli sprouts are pretty amazing. Broccoli sprouts specifically contain a substance called sulforaphane, and they're only found in broccoli sprouts. They're not found in other sprouts. And you have between 20 to 200 times more sulforaphane in broccoli sprouts as compared to grown broccoli, depending on the variety. And and guess what? Sulforaphane is one of the magical substances that helps to clean estrogen, right? Metabolize estrogen in the liver. But not just that, sulforaphane has also there's a number of studies that show the sulforaphane also, it kills stem cells of a cancer cells. So just imagine that, right? It's just like that little thing, the substance just goes and kills the stem cells of a cancer, which is pretty much like the core of the cancer cells. So it's pretty amazing stuff. So I mean, those are simple.
It's a really like a handful, because the serving size for broccoli sprouts is quite small. So you can literally just put a handful on the meal that you're already going to eat. You can grow your own. If you're a green thumb, they're pretty easy to do. I even managed it at one point. And I think people have really been focusing on those lettuce and courgettes and cucumbers, their vegetable choice, because they're lower in calories and they fill you up. And maybe they don't make you as gassy as the other ones. But if you're getting gassy and bloated and have a lot of pain from eating something like broccoli or cauliflower, it's probably a sign that your gut is imbalanced. And I agree with your recommendation on digestive bitters. That is just like a staple supplement that I would happily like recommend to anyone and everyone, because everyone could benefit from it. But people might have been thinking when you were talking about that, like, gut health, like what is the connection there? Like my issue is breast, like I'm listening to this podcast for breast pain or fibrocystic breast. Like why did you bring up the gut in all of that? I know why, but
Yeah,
can you tell
okay.
everyone else?
Right. Yeah, sure. Well, so I mean, just on like on a bigger, on a higher, higher level, let's just start off by saying, do you know anyone who's got MSC or digestive issues who is actually a healthy person? And the answer is most likely no, and so it's typically when somebody has got gut issues, meaning, often bloated, constipated, you've got acid reflux, you've got diarrhea, constipation, or alternating between those two, right? You're not eliminating properly. Those are all signs that the digestion is struggling. So, I mean, that's, resolving that is probably going to resolve a lot of other symptoms in your life, period. But how is it connected to hormones? Well, in many different ways. I would just mention maybe two. One is the fact that there is a subset of bacteria in the gut called the estrobolome. And the estrobolome are bacteria, bacteria that are coding for enzymes that break down estrogen. So basically, when you have a healthy gut, you're breaking down estrogens even more favorably. And, there are studies that show that women with breast cancer, for example, their digestive health, especially their microflora variety, is far more limited as compared to women who don't have breast cancer, who have a lot more variety of bacteria in the gut. So when we talk about digestive health, is, not just getting rid of all the bloating and digestive issues, but it's also, well, I mean, to get there is basically, I'm a big fan of doing the elimination diet and really removing all these inflammatory foods, but also adding a lot of foods that are really complementary to that. And, I'm sure you've covered a lot of that. There's a lot of books that talk about that. The other thing is, when it comes to digestion, is when the body is struggling to digest food in general, right? You're seeing things like particles in the poop, and you got gassy a lot of the time. May not realize that because we don't have nerve endings in our digestive tracts, the small and large intestine, but that's why a lot of people don't realize that. But the body is actually really struggling, and the more it's struggling with digestive health, the more inflammation it's creating. Well, guess what? Inflammation then affects the receptors, hormone receptors in the body. So even though you might have, every cell in the body has receptors for different hormones. So like, for example, your hair, cuticles would have receptors for estrogen, for thyroid hormone, right? Your ovaries would have receptors for estrogen, testosterone, et cetera, et cetera. Breast, for example, right, is a big, got back receptors for estrogen, progesterone, iodine. Well, guess what? When the body is inflamed, then these receptors are not as open. They're like receptors, like this open door, right, that invites these substances in. And when you're inflamed, these receptors then shut down, and they are not working as effectively. So, every good reason to, and I can just go on give you 10 other reasons why digestive health is going to change your life. But let's just, staying with hormones, those are the two big ones.
Yeah, I think there's it's probably easier to list the things that the gut isn't beneficial for. Like I can't even think of anything. So yeah, the gut is like the center of your body, like the center of your health, and definitely a foundational piece. If you want healthy hormones, a lot of the time you need to work on your gut, even if your symptoms aren't digestive based. Your inflammation could be coming out in premenstrual syndrome, acne on your face, fatigue, joint pain, those types of issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be like, people heal their digestion and then go like, oh my God, I'm sleeping so much better. I've lost weight finally, right? My weight is actually moving down after 20 years of dieting, all sorts, right? And so, yeah, I mean, the mental functions improve, depression can lift. I mean, just like the number of benefits are just so incredible.
Without even a direct focus on those conditions. Great.
Exactly.
So in terms of our conversation today on breast health, a lot of my audience is premenopausal. So like before menopause, like in the fertile years. Should these women be having any symptoms breast-wise at all? Like, is it normal to have some degree of breast tenderness, or should we not really notice anything with lumps and bumps, pains, cysts, anything like that?
Yeah. Okay. So, the answer is really the severity of things, right? There's two types of breast challenges. One is cyclical and non-cyclical. Cyclical is, as the name implies, it goes with your cycle, and typically that starts happening from right after ovulation until your next period, right? That's like the time of a lot of tenderness. Now, the question is like, do I touch my breast and I've got like a little bit of tenderness? That's fairly acceptable. Or is it to the point where a woman would have to, say, wearing A cup will suddenly have to change to C cup during the 2 weeks because her breasts are so swollen, right? There's a degree of difference there. Are my breasts so tender and sensitive that I can't even touch them? I don't want to be intimate. I can't put on a bra because it hurts so badly, right? I mean, that's not okay. Now, finding a lump or a cyst, can be an incredibly emotional moment for a woman, especially the first times that this happens, right? It's like, I mean, I equate it to, like when we had, like when 9/11 happened in the world, right? I mean, like almost everybody remembers where they were when that happened, when they heard the news, right? Or Princess Diana died or whatever. And so like, I still remember the very first moment when I found my first breast lump, and the amount of shame that comes with it. I was like, oh, it's all that smoking and potting that I did in college, right? And like, I should have taken care of myself. And then the whole dilemma of how do you get it diagnosed? Do you go do a thermogram or mammogram? And then if you go the mammogram route, they make it sound like you're gonna die tomorrow if you don't get it done, like, ASAP, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot to it. And I'm of the opinion that just, conventional medicine looks at it as, well, wait and see, right? So come back in 3 to 6 months time and let's see what happens. I don't, and if the breast lump has certain characteristics, they might want to do either biopsy, right, or send you for a mammogram. And so I think it's all very personal how we want to use this and how we want to get this diagnosed. However, I always look at it as dealing with something at that moment, but it's also like, I always ask myself a question, and I encourage, every woman to ask that question: what do I need to do not to ever deal with this again, right? And that I can really prevent and never find another lump, another cyst on my breast, like, so I don't deal with that horrendous pain. And I think that's really what I've dedicated most of my professional life to, is to addressing the root cause of breast changes, right? And all the breast changes we are talking about here are typically caused by 3 major things. The first one is estrogen dominance, we've been talking about here. Think of it this way, like especially the swelling of the breast, for example, right? Is that estrogen is a little bit like, if you use the analogy of a grass, in your yard, is estrogen helps to grow the grass. Progesterone comes in and it's like a mower, right? Just like cuts the grass down. So when you have an imbalance of estrogen and progesterone, it's just gonna go grow. You might have a lot of water retention, taking off rings or putting on shoes might be difficult, right? And it also can manifest in the breast. So we want to address that, as early as possible, because like what I mentioned, an ongoing estrogen dominance, and especially combined with family history of estrogen dominance issues and challenges, can eventually lead to something more serious like cancers. That's part of my calling. What I do is because, I have terrible genes. I'm a terrible estrogen metabolizer. Every single, DNA test that I've done proves that. And I need to put a lot more work compared to someone who doesn't have the same SNPs, right? Meaning that if I go drinking booze and eating gluten and going to sleep late and drinking coffee on a daily basis, I mean, I'm going to be an estrogenic wreck, right? And for many years, I used to ask myself, like, why am I like this? Why is it so, why is it, I go to Portugal and all these other women are doing that and they're okay. And here I am, I've got, these lumps on my breast now, and my period is from hell. And I can begin to feel like my thyroid is beginning to swell, right? And I'm like, why? Then ever since I found out why, then it's just easier to accept the fact that I just need to work a lot harder on my health. But the bottom line is that, initially for me, it was a big thing, was a fear thing. It was very fear-based, because both sides of my family, on my dad's and my mom's side, there are women who've been dying of estrogen and cancer. My aunt just died 2 years ago from ovarian cancer. On my mother's side, all my aunts have been having either breast issues or uterine cancers, right? And so it's rampant. And we have a joke in our family that, like, there's no woman in our family who is beyond 50 who still has a uterus, right? And so, you know, I'm almost 50. Like, as we were recording this, I'm just 2 months away from turning 50. And, you know, and I plan to hold on to my uterus for way longer than that, right?
You're going to change the game.
Change the game, exactly. So change, you know, and not letting the genes. I mean, genes are is you know, something that we can still control a lot of the time, like how they express, right? So anyway, so you know, back to the breast issues, estrogen dominance is a big factor there that can be addressed in some of the things we already talked about. The other thing with breast health is lymphatic stagnation. So if you think about it, you know, everything from tonsils, which a lot of people had them removed as children. Tonsils is like your lymphatic nodes that happen right here, right? And then you have everything down, including your armpits, your breasts are highly, highly lymphatized. And so, you know, the lymphatic system, think of it this way, it's like a highway that these trucks basically evacuate all the trash out of the body, right? So when there is lymphatic stagnation happening, then it's, you know, not unusual for us then to, like I said, you can't take off your rings, you can't put on your shoes, your breasts really swell up. What can we do? Well, we can start activating that lymphatic massage by doing a lymphatic massage. Either, I mean, first of all, let's just admit that even by you moving, if you just like stand up and you just, you know, and you just like do this, even when you're like in line waiting for, you know, to check out at the supermarket, right? You know, just like bouncing. I mean, that itself already starts moving the lymphatic system. But we can do something very specific for the breast as well. If you want, we can do a demo in just a second.
Definitely. Yeah, so those on watching on the video can watch along, but I know you said you're gonna try and talk people through, so if they're just listening, they can.
Straightforward.
Great.
Yeah. And then, you know, and then the last thing about what I see with a lot of women with breast issues is really just the systemic inflammation, right? So, you know, that's why it kind of goes back to the gut health. Is I see that a lot of women are very inflamed. Yes, stress can be a contributor. Yes, poor sleep can be a huge contributor. But gut health, ongoing gut health issues can also be a huge factor in this. And when you are constantly inflamed, that really affects the breast as well. So if we address these three things, estrogen dominance, lymphatic stagnation, and inflammation, right? Just a lot of really marvelous things can happen, not just to your breasts, but, you know, suddenly you're like, oh my God, well, my weight is going down. Finally, like my cellulite on my legs is like, you know, is actually my legs are toning up and I'm sleeping so much better. My hair is healthier. And you just like so many amazing things can start happening.
So good. So yeah, we would love to follow along with the technique that you want to share, the breast massage. And is this different to what you would do for a breast examination? Could they be done at the same time? To like do a double benefit?
Massage. Yeah, you can use the massage for you know, for detection as well. You know, let's do this. Actually, let me just talk about first, what can you use to massage your breasts, right? Mm-hmm. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can do it while you're taking a shower. So you're nicely wet. You've got, hopefully using some nice clean Castile soap, not something that contains all these phthalates and fake perfumes and stuff like that, because it's like really the last thing you want to put on your breast and massage your breast with. So nice clean soap, and you'll lather it up. But you can also do this with a cream or an oil infused with different herbs, and we can talk about the herbs in just a second. That have specific affinity for breast health. And, you know, and so, but if you had like a nice cream, one of your favorite creams, it's something that you can do that in the morning, or you can do that at night. Hopefully you use a cream that absorbs really quickly so that you can, you know, wait for 2-3 minutes, put on your bra and start your day pretty quickly. So what we're going to do is, it's really pretty simple. Lift up your left arm. And if you're just listening to this, put it behind your head, to the back of your head, right? And so this is where you're going to have, like, you know, your breast in that sort of a little elevated position. What's important to remember is where is your exit, where do you want to point all that lymphatic direction, right? Or the massaging direction towards. So the exit point is right here. So I'm pointing is between my armpit and my neck, right? So that's the area that we kind of want to evacuate everything towards that point here. So what we're going to start is you want to start massaging your breast from your nipple. And I'm pointing at the top of my nipple, like 12 o'clock, right? And then very gently, I'm just going to be, it doesn't have to be hard. And, using 2 or 3 fingers, using your palm, and then just basically massaging it out towards the exit sign. I'm then going to move towards 2 o'clock, right? So, and then do exactly the same thing. And then you move to 4 o'clock and moving the same way. Now, in terms of the pressure, think of it this way. I'm sure everybody has seen honey tubes, right? That are sold like in coffee shops and stuff. Like a little, tube with honey inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order to get the honey out, right? It's exactly the same kind of pressure you want to apply here. It's not too hard, because then it just creates pain and more stagnation and, and a bit of trauma in the breast, if you will. So you want to be gentle with your breast, but also firm enough to create that kind of movement. So now let's move on to 3 o'clock, and then we're just moving that again towards the exit. And then let's go towards 6 o'clock, because that's the one that can be a little tricky. You want to, from your nipple again, you want to press it down, right? Press your breast down, and then going back up again to our exit sign, right? Towards my neck, in between my neck and my armpit, right? And then I'm moving again, over to whatever time that is, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock.
And
right?
because the camera can be flipped sometimes. So basically, as you're going around the clock, it's towards your chest, your breastbone first. So that way round, down, and then back to like the side that your arm's on, and back up.
Exactly. And then you just, you lift up your other hand, put it behind your head, and you just do the same thing for your other breast.
So really only takes like a few minutes.
Exactly. And you can do that. There's no, you can't do too much of it. I mean, it's, but I think doing that, like if you really have a lot of breast issues, doing that couple of times a day can be really helpful until you find a relief. There's a couple of, what you can do to make it even better, even more effective for the breast, is to look out for oils or creams that are infused with some specific herbs. And so, the first one is, and I don't know whether you guys have that in the UK. Do you have poke root?
I've heard of it before. I've never actively searched it.
Okay.
So that's like a herb that's infused in an oil.
Yeah, so exactly. So it is actually a very weedy, it's called pokeweed because it's super weedy. It grows in the south of the United States. South and middle as well. No, actually, that's not, I just came from the East Coast, and they have poke root there too. Okay. Poke is actually, well, for those of you in the United States, it's like, if you're from the South, poke salad. But the leaves are actually poisonous unless they're cooked properly. So, but the root is what the magic is. In American Western herbalism, poke root infused oils is the magic of women who work with women's health. And so for mastalgia, so breast pain, for uterus pain, for PMS, for women who just had a surgery, who had it, uterine prolapse, right? Poke root is just absolutely magical. So if you can score one that is like infused by someone, or if you can find poke root yourself, buy it online and learn how to infuse in oil, which is really simple. There's hundreds of videos on YouTube on how to do that. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, and I'm just looking now, and we do have it accessible to us in the UK, so which is great.
Oh, perfect. Great.
And I've just got the Elvis song in my head, Poke Salad Annie. That's all. People can remember it by that.
That's funny.
I'm a big Elvis fan, so I had to throw that one in there.
And then, and then so poke is really we have a product that contains poke root, right? And we were testing every single ingredient with a group of testers. I mean, just that itself created so much change and relief for women's pain. It was just super magical. It was incredible how potent that is. You don't want to internally ingest it. It is a slight poison, but externally it's amazing. The other herb that, we have found to be extremely helpful is St. John's wort. And I believe that's in the UK too. Some people know St. John's wort is like for depression. And so we are, the truth of the matter is that it is so anti-inflammatory even for the brain that it can be a happy, we call it the happy sunshine herb, because it really, if you can check it internally and it's not conflicting with any of your medications, I mean, taking it internally, St. John's wort just like really elevates your spirit. It just makes like the whole world just sounds, easier, is easier, right, to live in. But when applied externally, it's an incredibly anti-inflammatory, it's got incredibly inflammatory properties. And so we found that to be also very, very helpful for massaging. The other one that women can do is, almost everybody knows about evening primrose oil, right? And so that the magical substance in there is called gamma linolenic acid, GLA. So whether you're using evening primrose oil or borage oil, doesn't really matter. It's the same. The substance is the same. Just get the capsule, open up the capsule, depending on the size of the breast, 1 or 2 capsules per breast, right? And just massage it into your breast. And again, evening primrose oil is recommended for women with PMS, right? And that's for a good reason. And it has like a real efficacy, but you can take it internally, but you can also apply it externally. And then the effect is like, 1 + 1 = 5, right? Mm-hmm. So those are just like some really simple solution. One other thing I just want to add on to this is that when you're using any of these oils or creams infused with these herbs, you can also add like just a drop of ginger oil, a ginger essential oil, and just not, with essential oils, less is more, right? So just to be really cautious of that. And the reason why I like ginger, oil is because ginger is very warming, right? Like think of it this way, like when you are all cold, your body is all like really tense, right? When you're warm, like in summer, right, we all very relaxed, like everything is flowing. For your body to really relax and experience a good lymphatic movement, you've got to be warm and relaxed. And so what ginger does, ginger is a very hot herb, and is going to warm up the breast from the inside as well as it gets in, and just really stimulating the lymphatic movement even more.
That's so great. And I know in the US, you have some products that have those ingredients in. So your products, is the brand Happy Sisters? Is that right?
Yes. So no, the brand is Wellena. That's just our overarching brand, but the product name is Happy Sisters. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We sell it in a box like this. And so there is a cream that has all these oils that I talked about and more. Actually, we also have a couple of other things, including, so it's got Poke, St. John's wort, GLA. It has ginger oil, but we're also using Nigella sativa, which is in the Middle East. They call Nigella sativa, the oil that cures everything but death. Mm-hmm. And then the supplement is there to address more of the root cause. And the root cause is basically, so we focus really a lot on this, on the supplement to address estrogen dominance. So we're using things like DIM, calcium diglucarate, and then we're using magnesium. Magnesium is amazing for breast health as well. And then we use things like andrographis and yerba santa, both of them. Remember how I talked about the clean and dirty estrogens, how your liver can, and so these herbs help the liver to metabolize estrogens in a positive, in a clean direction and away from the dirty one. So you're basically producing more clean estrogens. We also use herbs such as red root, which is a very gentle lymphagogue, but powerful one. Lymphagogue means that it moves the lymphatic system on the inside as well. So those are, some of the things that we just put together to really think this through, so that women who really experience a lot of pain can do something for the root cause of it so that it goes away. This is a 60-day supply. So hopefully after two months, you don't have to take it anymore. Your body kind of will self-regulate. Right. And then the cream is just to get like instant relief, especially for those women who are like constantly in pain.
And that sounds amazing. Yeah, I'm sad that we don't have it accessible outside of the US, but that sounds great. Like I would definitely be on that if I was in the US and had any issues. And that's a sign of a good business, in my opinion, who they're not wanting you to take it forever. They're like, the same with my consultations and clients. I don't want to be working with them forever. I want to like get them better and then send them on their way, which isn't technically like the typical business model that we're taught, but I think that's a sign of a good person, a good practitioner, and a good ethic is like giving people what they need to not suffer any longer. So sounds like amazing ingredients in there.
Yeah, thank you. And also the kit also comes with instructions on how to massage your breast. So it's actually a little standee that you can put in the bathroom and learn how to do that. And then it comes also with a booklet that just explains everything of like, I'm gonna show you this one. Because I'm thinking of making stickers out of this. So it's just I'm showing.
Yeah, stickers would be great.
Yeah. So for those of you who are listening, I'm just showing inside the booklet that we have in an illustration of different kinds of boobs. You know, funny thing is nobody has perfect boobs. And so almost every woman has one bigger, one smaller, you know, nipples pointing in all directions, up and down and all that kind of stuff. So we always say that we've made happy sisters for all sorts of sisters.
Love that. I love that you included that too. And education is everything. We want people to know like what they can do and actually feel empowered, because when you have this long family history of estrogen dominance, it can feel like you have this death sentence pretty much where there's nothing that you can do. But conditions are 90 to 95% environmental driven, only 5 to 10% genetic. When it comes to things like breast cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, all sorts, we have a lot of things that we can do.
And Vivian, I just want to mention one more thing that, you know, because I know this creates a lot of frustrations for people who are outside of the United States, going like, oh, here we go again. You know, she's talking about something and we can't get it into my country. The thing is that, you know, what I would just encourage is look at that. You can go to the website and look at Happy Sisters, look at the ingredients that we use and try to put this together in your own country. You know, like just to give you an example, like andrographis, you can easily find that as a tincture. You know, red root, you can find it as a tincture, right? DIM and calcium glucurate is widely available, right? And so, you know, you might end up just buying a few pieces of supplements, but they will just give you the same results. You know, maybe not packaged as beautifully and easy as we have, but you can make do.
And I've just been searching and Googling while we've been talking, and I found a nice couple of products online that I'm going to put in the show notes as well. So hopefully people can access those if they can't get yours in the US. Amazing. I just want to ask your opinion on a few other things relating to breast health and the conversation that we're having today. You mentioned a while ago about iodine as an important nutrient. Like, what are your thoughts on iodine and even supplementing with it, applying it topically, because it's a very controversial nutrient in the health world. Some people are very against it and they say that it can be quite dangerous and to avoid completely unless you want to trigger autoimmune disease, autoimmune thyroid issues. Other people are like, it's the holy grail, like it's so important, especially for breast health. You want to rub it all over your body every day, take it internally, eat tons of seafood. So where do you stand?
Yeah, so, you know, like with a lot of things, there is reasons why there is two sides of the camp, and I'm probably middle of the road, and with exceptions. So my take on iodine is this. First of all, let's acknowledge that the fact that iodine, the largest number of receptors in the body for iodine in women is our brain, breast, thyroid, and our ovaries, right? So when you start taking iodine, that's why a lot of people be like, oh my God, all my brain fog is gone. I'm like sharp as a tack now. And my breasts are finally not hurting. And the list goes on. And so, you know, it all depends on how deficient the person is. I do believe that there is a time and a place for replenishing iodine and then backing off. The problem starts when people overdose on iodine. And I have seen this before because when I first started doing this work, I was focusing on Hashimoto's and thyroid diseases because that was my, you know, big part of my history, my story. And, you know, I worked with a number of clients who were given iodine by their practitioners and developed what's called thyroid storm and ended up in a hospital. So there is definitely such a thing as too much of a good thing. Iodine is furthermore really counterindicated for people with Hashimoto's disease. There is a number of studies that show that the Hashimoto's antibodies can really go up. And so one thing, you know, if somebody's really wanting to try iodine and has ruled out any other options, then it would be really good to measure your TPO antibodies for Hashimoto's and see how high they are. And even at below 50, then under a supervision of a very responsible and knowledgeable practitioner, not DIYing that. That's the other thing I want to just say. Iodine will be one of those substances that I think actually should be controlled. You know, in the US, like the FDA when starts controlling NAC, right? I mean, it's just like, really, people, what about iodine? That does a lot more damage to people, you know, than, so I'm just, I feel like there's a time and place for iodine, but it's also, it can really hurt people. I have also seen women who have been overdosing on iodine and developing hyperthyroidism, right? So, you know, including Graves' disease, and like the person I mentioned, like the client that I had when I was in private practice, you know, she ended up in a hospital with a thyroid storm after slathering herself with iodine everywhere, right? So replenish, there's tests for iodine. The urine test is, it's called the iodine loading test. That's a really good one to do, and see where you are, correct that, and then go into a maintenance mode with your iodine and not be overdosing that every day.
Yeah, I agree. I'm somewhere in the middle. I've looked at both sides, and I've personally tried it, but I tried it definitely too soon in my healing journey because I had so many other problems, and I just read a book about iodine, thought everything was due to that, not knowing that I had issues with mold exposure and like severe leaky gut and histamine issues and severely nutrient deficient. I had really low calcium. And iodine, when you take that too high, can actually drop your calcium levels, making it worse. So I didn't have like a severe reaction like the person that you know, but yeah, we definitely don't want to blame everything on iodine. It's an important mineral, and it could be linked to the breast symptoms that you're having, but be really careful and go slowly. Next thing I want to ask about is your thoughts on bras. So there's obviously different types, wired versus unwired. What are your thoughts on them? Because I'm thinking in terms of lymphatic system, especially if it's not well-fitted one or it's really tight, then that can block the lymphatic flow. So just wondering if you personally recommend them, or if there's any different brands that you would suggest.
I don't have any particular brands, but you know, like podcasts like yours, like you have listeners from around the world, and so it's kind of hard to point out to a brand bra. But no, absolutely. I mean, you already alluded to that. I'm not a fan of. I think women should not be wearing wired bras. I mean, this is really. So let me just show this. I mean, wired bra really cuts into. This is the part here that cuts off. You know, so remember we talked about the lymphatic system being like a highway of evacuating trash, right, of your body. So you're basically putting a blockage right here, right? And so that's just bad news all around. The other thing is, so definitely a bras without wires. You know, bras that the other the thing that you kind of alluded to is that a lot of women have misfitted bras. So for example, you might have a bra that doesn't have a wire, but it's still too tight here. And so there are specific, especially for women who have larger breasts, and there is a lot more pressure on them, you know, on holding the breasts in place. There are more and more outfitters. They do bra fittings, and I highly recommend and they consider lymphatic movement and freeing the lymphatic system, but also like the pain in the back and all that kind of stuff that happens with women with larger breasts. They actually do fitting, but also they do recommendations of different types of bras, whether it's for sports or for daily use. I highly recommend that because I had a friend who has done a fitting like that. She was actually in London, and she said that the woman at the shop said that about 80% of women are wearing the wrong bras for their size and type of body. Yeah,
and it's all right for someone like me with small boobs. Like I could easily get away with not wearing a bra, but there's going to be people listening. They're like, "There's no way I have to wear something."
Yeah, for sure.
There are options. Just make sure that it's not wired. I mean, I've even been hearing about the impacts of EMF and radiation, and how if you've got this metal on your body, you're potentially like an antenna for these frequencies in the earth, which we want to avoid. I was going to ask your thoughts on thermographs versus mammograms for detection of any like stagnation, any like cancerous cells, or any potential cancers.
Yeah, I'm a big so first of all, let me just say that I think it's really important to distinguish that it's not these two technologies are not interchangeable, meaning a thermograph has a different purpose than a mammogram does. Okay, so let's just distinguish that first, because it's like these wars going on between oh, should I get diagnosed with a thermogram or mammogram? So first, so thermography, the way I see this is that thermography is something that you should do yearly. It's super safe, right? And it's just photography. It shows you the changes in the breast way earlier before they become a problem, right? And so a lot of times women who, cancer doesn't show up just like that. Cancer is years of DNA damage and vascular changes in the breast that happen way before that. So if you get this done, on a yearly basis, then you start seeing changes physiologically, what happens in your breast way before it becomes a problem. The tricky thing with thermography is to make sure you're getting it done in a really high quality place that specializes in thermography. It's not a place that does Botox and the thermography, low resolution, people who are kind of like just, adding that as a service to the whole in the clinic. In a lot of times it's a spa too. I mean, those are really rubbish. What you want to find is a thermography center who, from the time you look at their website, it's like they're all about breast health. They specialize in that. They are able to provide dietary advice. They are, and a couple of things to look out for. So first of all, ask them whether they're using high resolution cameras, right? That's the first thing. Second thing is you want to ask them if they do contrast with black and white as well. The black and white is actually very telling. Let me give you an example. There was, for instance, like when I got my training on thermography, the doctor was showing a woman who just had a coffee, and in her thermography, in the black and white, she literally looked like a panther. She had like these spots. She was so estrogenic. So these panther spots show estrogen dominance. And then he waited for about half an hour for the coffee to get metabolized and excreted by the body. And then he took the photo again, and it was practically like 80% of the spots were gone. Oh. So high quality, thermogram will do that. You also want to find out if they are part of like thermography association. In America, there's thermography association as a regulatory body. I mean, those people are really serious, and that way that you're getting a credible thermogram, because otherwise you're getting a false negative, right? Meaning like, oh, my boobs are great, but then the technology wasn't used properly. The person doesn't know what he or she is doing, right? And so you also want to, like, another pointer is make sure that when you get into a room, it's a very cold room. Like, I don't know what it is in centigrades, but like in Fahrenheit, it's about like 65 or so. And you're in that room for like about 20 minutes or so to really cool down the body, right? So anyway, so I'm a big fan of thermography because it really just shows you a lot of stuff that you can act on really quickly. But also, like, if you do a baseline thermogram and then you do it 6 months later because you've changed your diet, you started adding all these herbs that we talked about, you begin to massage your breast, right? And when you get off gluten and you're just feeling so much better, right? And you're paying more attention to things. And then it's kind of nice to see 6 months later, just to see your work, like how your body has responded. It's like, oh, I don't have these red spots anymore. I don't have those yellow spots anymore, right? Like everything is a lot more even and wonderful. Mammograms, as much as they are positioned as prevention, to me, they are not prevention. A mammogram is typically when you already have a lump and you have a problem, you go in there, it's going to show you that there is a problem, right? And they'll tell you how severe the problem is. The issue with that, though, is that all these changes years before that happens, all that inflammation in the breast, right? All the physiological changes that happen in the soft tissue, they don't show up in a mammogram. So to me, that's not really prevention. However, if I have found a lump on my breast, or if I have a history of breast cancers in a family, right? Would I do a mammogram after I turn 45 or 50? Probably yes, right? So, I think there's a time and place for both of them.
Great. Yeah, it's good to know, because I think people just like cross them over and think that the thermograph is just a more natural version, but we want to be open still to some conventional treatments. Even I'm not completely against scans and all sorts of things, but we want to be somewhere in the middle and just weigh up the pros and cons for both and be proactive instead of reactive, like you've been preaching and like I preach to everyone as well.
Yeah.
Amazing. And last thing that I want to get your thoughts on for breast health is impacts of caffeine and alcohol. Are they complete no-nos? At least while we're trying to heal, or is there some moderation? Is there the thing with the quality or the type of caffeine and alcohol that we're consuming?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the unfortunate thing is it depends. The answer is, and I think every woman just has to try it on herself and figure out how caffeine or coffee specifically, I want to just say, and alcohol affects her. So let's talk about coffee first, because that's a really interesting one. You know, the question is it overall caffeine that is the problem, or is it coffee, right? And I have found is that the larger problem is coffee in itself. It's not just the caffeine in coffee, but there is something else in a coffee, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but a specific oil that's highly inflammatory for some women. You know, also it's good to remember that we are genetically, some of us are slow metabolizers of caffeine metabolizers, and there's specific SNP for that. Like I'm a very slow one. If I have anything caffeinated after 12 p.m., I'm pretty much gonna be, my sleep is gonna be toast. So you need to know yourself how it affects you. I will say, Vivian, in our community, excuse me, I have seen women who got off coffee and substituted that with other sources of caffeine, like green tea, matcha tea, black tea, white tea, right? And so that the caffeine element is not taken away, because a lot of women don't want to go through caffeine withdrawals, or they do feel like they need the stimulation. And I have seen women say that just by changing the caffeine source, their hot flashes have gone away, they're sleeping way better, their breast health has improved tremendously. So, you know, coffee is also acidic. I mean, that's another, you know, dimension that we didn't really talk much about here, but, you know, I'm a big fan of alkalizing the body, right? And I've done tests on myself when I have a coffee and I'll pee on this, you know, on the litmus paper 20 minutes later, and I'm like super acidic. I'm like 5.3. I'm like, what the heck, man? This is really bad, right? And then my, you know, and then it comes back later to a healthier level soon after that. Alcohol, you know, is the same story. Is there are some of us who are just not metabolizing alcohol very well, and we're gonna be a lot more predisposition towards alcohol. I mean, the destruction it can do to your microbiome is tremendous. It does create a poor microflora, so the diversity of your microflora gets diminished with alcohol. There's specific studies on women having a lot more breast cancer incidences who drink more than 3 drinks a week, right? And so, you know, for that reason, I'm a big fan of moderation, because having, you know, let's also admit the fact that alcohol was invented in the first place for ceremonies, to bond, to be present, to have like some kind of a higher awareness to God, you know, or whatever's the higher thing was, to bond and connect with the community, right? I mean, that's what alcohol was originally traditionally used before it got out of, I mean, same as tobacco, right, for that matter, until it got out of hand. And so I think there is a time and place for a glass of wine, you know, but we also have to acknowledge that every person, I think every woman has to find her sweet spot, meaning, you know, one of the things I see with alcohol, apart from all the things we mentioned, makes estrogen dominance worse, destroys your gut health, microbiome diversity, but also, you know, for a lot of women, it kills your sleep. You know, and so especially women 45 and above, we become a lot more sensitive to alcohol as compared to, you know, when we went to college and university and you're just like knocking back all these drinks, right? And, you know, next morning you wake up, you go to class and it's like, oh yeah, I might need an extra coffee, but that's about that, right? Now try to do that, like, you know, do 5 tequila shots and you're not gonna get up the next morning, right? When you're in your 40s and 50s. So, you know, so the it can really destroy the sleep for women. And so the question is, you need to find your sweet spot. Like for me, it would be not drinking after 3 p.m. So during the day I don't drink. It's on the weekends if I have something at lunchtime. I try, my cutoff point is 3 o'clock, because otherwise I'm not wearing my Aura ring, but I wear my Aura ring for sleep, just to see if the quality
Got
of
mine on.
Perfect. Yeah. Mine is charging. You know, and it just shows me like it completely destroys my deep sleep. I get like almost no deep sleep when I drink in the evenings, right? So I think every woman has to find that out, but it's I would say that, for really healthy hormones, doing no more than 3 drinks a week is probably a good spot for you to be in.
And I would say, like, if you're trying all the things but you're still holding on to that 2 cups of coffee, you're still having a bottle of wine at the weekend, like, just see how you get on for a month, and just, it is something that's under your control at the end of the day. It maybe doesn't have to be forever, but if you're really struggling with breast pain or you're concerned about your cancer risk, then we can't control some things in life, like our exposure to environmental estrogens or stress and pollution that can increase the risk of breast issues and estrogen dominance. But we can control, like, what we're feeding ourselves, what we're drinking. And yeah, some people just need to get through that first 30 days and break the habit, and then they realize, oh, I actually don't need this. And it's ironic what you said, that alcohol's used to, like, be more social, because people are using it now to, like, numb out, and just, like, they sit in their house, like, on their own, and, like, hide away from everyone, so they don't feel their emotions. So it's just completely changed.
That's when traditional uses of a substance, right, just get abused, and get out of control. I mean, it's the same thing with tobacco. I mean, in Native Americans were using tobacco in ceremonies. That was and then, we started abusing that and using further. And then, now a lot of people smoke just in hiding, right? And, so totally same as with alcohol, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Exactly. And all the additional ingredients they put into cigarettes now, and how much it's, like, marketed, and how much, like, pesticides and heavy metals are in there. It can be the same with alcohol, and coffee's not what it used to be and how it used to be consumed. We're now having all these syrups and sweeteners in there as well that just make it way more inflammatory than it maybe used to be. So yeah, I think we covered, like, the main takeaways of breast health. I'm still going to plug your book because I think it's an amazing resource. So this is Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. I'm pretty sure that it's called, released maybe, was it a couple of years ago now, 1 or 2 years?
Exactly.
Yeah, so you have a whole book on estrogen dominance. You touch on breast health in there as well. And now you've got the product line coming out, which I'm really excited for you to launch and help people with, because I think more people are having issues with the hormones more than ever, even especially the past few years with all the stress of lockdowns and everything. So we want to give people actionable tips, education, and products that can help them address the root cause. So I'm really happy that you're doing that. But before I let you go, I want to ask you 3 questions. So the first one is, what's something that you do daily to stay in hormonal harmony?
I really and I really protect my sleep. That's like, yeah.
And if we want good hormones and to reduce our cancer risk, they've even done studies, haven't they, showing that nurses who work night shifts have a higher increased rate of breast cancer, because they don't get that protection from melatonin, which isn't just a sleep hormone, it's a key antioxidant in the body.
Yeah. And
the same
taking
with my sleep.
melatonin is not the same. So
no,
that's
exactly.
just clarify that. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. And in order to, it's kind of simplistic, right? Just say, like, I really want to protect my sleep. And so, like, I'll go to sleep at 9 o'clock. I get up at 5:30. But there's a lot, that goes a lot into figuring out what, like, for me, what it was to have really good quality sleep. And that's, for example, having early dinner, having a light meal at night, no alcohol, no caffeine after, noon or 2 p.m. is probably the latest, right? Exercising during the day, movement, right? So there's just a lot of things that go into that, into having really good, high quality sleep. But I'm very protective over that, because it really can either make or break my day,
And the Aura Ring has allowed me to figure that out as well, because you can really, like, at first I was, like, really obsessive with it. I was like, what can I do? These little biohacks throughout the day. Whereas now I've got my key things that I know make a huge difference for me. It's having, like, a warm drink before bed, having a cool room, reading before bed instead of watching TV. They make the biggest difference for me, and things like exercise as well. So I'm very much into sleep also. What's your favorite product at the moment? So it could be health related, non-health related, a gadget, a makeup product, anything that you want to share?
I think the Aura Ring has been probably making the most profound difference. And then I just got some dumbbells and a rack for my dumbbells. And I've joined a dumbbell program online that I'm really excited about. It's going to be live. So I'm kind of switching from, you know, I just don't want to drive. I live up high in the mountains in Colorado. And so in winter, driving down to town often can just mean more exposure of accidents, which are very common on the roads here. And so I would rather do something at home. And so just doing dumbbells, especially, you know, strength training, weightlifting for women after 45 is just like the best form of exercise. And so I feel amazing. I feel way better than doing cardio. So now I've just got like my own little gym set up right there.
Amazing. So that's your 2023 focus. It's strength training, building muscle, and supporting your hormones in the process. Love that.
Yes.
And is there just one takeaway message from today's conversation that you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think I'll say, listen to your sisters. Your sisters are telling you that they might need your help. And sometimes it's early in the game and you're like, hey, we are struggling, you know, and it's still time to make those changes. But I'll just say, don't ignore those symptoms. You know, your sisters are telling you something that they need help, and do it sooner than later.
Yeah. Listen to your body when it's whispering, otherwise it'll start screaming at you. And sometimes it's like a little bit too late, unfortunately. So love your messaging. And again, I will link to your book, your products in the resources below of the podcast. And thank you for coming on again for a part 2. I'm sure that you'll come up with some more amazing products in the future and continue working in the women's health field. So I will probably have you on again in the future.
Thanks so much, Vivian. Thank you. And thank you for creating awareness about breast health. I think this is so underestimated, you know, what women can really do.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would love for you to leave me a rating and review on your podcast app, as this helps to support the show and it allows it to reach more people with this valuable information. Come and say hi over on Instagram. I'm at Viva Natural Health. And if you haven't already, check out my website, vivanaturalhealth.co.uk, for tons more free resources and to discover how I could support you further. I currently offer one-on-one consultation packages if you want my top level support, then more affordable group programs and self-paced online courses. So there really is something for everyone. If you're ready to change and get some answers but aren't sure which option would be best, take that first step today and apply for a free enrollment call on my website, and we'll discuss the best steps for you to take in order to achieve hormonal harmony. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you back here next week for another episode.